during the 7th century BC that a last alliance of subject peoples rose up against the brutal Assyrian Empire, which had dominated the world for some 1500 years. After the last great Assyrian king, Ashurbanipal, died in 627 BC, his empire began to fall apart as hordes of Scythians, Cimmerians, Medes and Persians crossed over the borders into the empire in the wild plateaus and steppelands to join up with subject Babylonians, Chaldeans and Egyptians, long discontented with the oppressive policies of their overlords. In the ensuing violence and chaos, they divided the Assyrian Empire amongst themselves. After the dust had settled, a former Assyrian regional overlord named Nabopolassar was the native Babylonian ruler who came out on top. And by 616 BC, he had carved himself out a substantial kingdom around Babylon. By 612, all of the subject and neighbouring peoples to the Assyrians came together to strike one final blow at their former oppressors, and they put the capital city of Nineveh to the torch, in an event signifying the end of over a millennia of continuous rule by the Assyrians. By the time of his death in 605 BC, Nabopolassar had expertly navigated diplomacy and warfare with the other powerful states of the era, and founded a successor kingdom to the Assyrian Empire, which rivaled its power. The Neo-Babylonian Empire was born, but it would reach its zenith under his son, the longest-serving king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar had been born in around 634 BC. There is therefore a strong possibility that he was present as a young man at the Battle of Nineveh in 612, and possibly even commanded a contingent of warriors on behalf of his father. As the firstborn son, he was likely prepared to rule from a young age, although his succession to the throne was far from assured during this turbulent time. His father had been a mere Assyrian official during his lifetime, yet upon his son's death in 562, the Neo-Babylonian Empire had grown larger and more powerful than that of the last great Assyrian king, Ashurbanipal, and arguably greater than any Assyrian ruler. Nebuchadnezzar is first mentioned in 607 BC, shortly after the destruction of Nineveh, at which point he was already a crown prince. In 605, he led a large army against the Egyptians, who had capitalised on the chaos of the period by occupying Syria. In the ensuing Battle of Carchemish, Necho II of Egypt was defeated and both Syria and Phoenicia brought under Babylonian control. Nabopolassar died that year and his son returned to Babylon to ascend to the throne. Over the next decade, he devoted much of his time to subduing and pacifying his eastern and northern borders, possibly against those very same steppe peoples who had allied with his father to defeat the Assyrians just decades earlier. In 594, there was a serious rebellion in Babylon itself, and in 593 the army was sent west again, likely in retaliation to campaigns by a new king in Egypt. In around 587, King Zedekiah of Judah attempted to organise a rebellion amongst the smaller states in the region. His capital, Jerusalem, was taken by the Babylonians shortly afterwards, after which Nebuchadnezzar was able to incorporate the former Assyrian provinces of Cilicia into his own empire, and he may have also campaigned again into Egypt. The ruins of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon are some of the best preserved in the Middle East. The archaeological site stretches over a space of 2,000 acres near the modern-day city of Baghdad. During his reign, he enlarged the royal palace to include several new wings, possibly including the world's first museum. He also built and repaired numerous temples, a bridge over the Euphrates, a grand processional boulevard folded with coloured stone and adorned with lions, and finally, the lavishly decorated Ishtar Gate on the north side of the city. At the beginning of every year, in a grand gesture to the god Marduk, a vast procession would leave his city temple and march northwards to a temple outside of the city walls amidst rejoicing crowds. Towards the end of his reign, however, Nebuchadnezzar may have become insane. He allegedly became deeply suspicious of his sons, whom he did not prepare for rule or allow any power. After his death in 562, the throne was seized by Nabonidus, no relation to Nebuchadnezzar, who was in turn overthrown by Cyrus the Great of Persia, who would go on to found the Persian Achaemenid Empire less than 25 years after Nebuchadnezzar's death, thus putting an end to the short-lived reign of the Neo-Babylonians. Nebuchadnezzar is still remembered as one of the greatest kings in history. His legacy was inherited by the Persians, who would utilise much of the pre-existing infrastructure already in place, and after them, a succession of vast and powerful empires that would also follow in the region.